I was happy to see as people were signing in on the chat, and if you haven't yet done so, please do, the variety of places that we're from. And that's important to the topic of today, which is Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship, where you live. We're going to talk about creating local groups. And also, I wanted to point out, you're the first group to know that in our board meeting recently, we voted to formally change our name from LDS Earth Stewardship, that we will from here on out be Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship. First use will be entirely spelled out like that. And then after that, it'll be LDSES. So it's a shift, but it's a pretty easy to do shift because of its being similar to the name we currently have. All right. So the picture here shows volunteers from one of our Earth Stewardship events. And one of the things that is great about being able to have a local group is being able to gather together with people of faith and others in the community to do good together, to do Earth Stewardship, to show honor to our Creator by the way we care for creation. And I thought I'd start off by just reminding us, as I was thinking about this talk, about the many scriptures we have that refer to faith as a seed, and that lovely analogy of being able to plant the seed, and if it's good and it's in good ground, how it grows. And even something as small as a mustard seed can create something very large and beautiful and meaningful. Okay, and of course, the scriptures are often referring to our faith in Christ, but I think there's a relationship, because when we have the faith to try to create a local group that will together be doing Earth Stewardship, honoring our God, our Creator, by the way we care for creation, it's, I believe, a manifestation of our faith, a planting of seeds that can grow. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the seeds that we've planted in Maryland, Virginia, DC, the Mid-Atlantic. We, in 2016, I had been a member of LDS Earth Stewardship for several years at that point, and just a member online, and I would watch things being posted, and periodically there would be events, but they were always either in Salt Lake or the Provo, Orem area. And I kind of felt bad because I wanted to participate, but couldn't since I didn't live there. And that was before they did things online. Anyway, so I contacted Brigham, who was then, as now, president of the organization, and said, there's a pretty big place. Did you ever think about having local groups of LDS Earth Stewardship that could gather together and do stewardship, but in a way that's distributed in various parts of the world? And he said they actually had been praying to try to do something like that, but didn't know quite what steps to take, how to make it happen. And I said, well, if you will trust me, I think I could be your person to get the first group going. And it does require a certain level of trust to let somebody that you don't know represent the organization in another location. So it took a number of months for us to organize this first group and to get a memorandum of understanding that the board was comfortable with, in which we could sign, that outlined basically what our responsibilities would be as a new group and what the organization's responsibilities would be to us. And so that has provided the blueprint then for all future. There have been some minor adjustments, but essentially that original memorandum of understanding is the blueprint for future groups. So it was helpful to have sort of like a trial period where our group was the only local group. And we got to kind of experiment with the word for a while, with the seed. Would it grow? Would it have good fruit? And I feel like it has had good fruit. And so our first event, we had about 20 people attend. And these are a couple of photos from the first event. So one advice I'd have if you start a local group, because I wasn't at the time thinking that, someday I'd like to see pictures of the first event, but I'm glad now that we have a few pictures to sort of document what you do if you start a new group. One of the things I'm most proud of as our group is that we were able to get a $25,000 grant from the Chesapeake Bay Trust. And we did a very major landscaping project on a historic African-American site to create in an area that was just a weedy lawn. We now have 4 very big beds of native plants And we've been able to have more than 400 volunteers help, about 450 volunteers help in multiple events, learning how to plant native plants, what are the best plant selections or some of the better plant selections for our area, the ways that they not only provide habitat for pollinators and birds and other animals, but also helps hold and clean stormwater. So they're very good, much better than lawn for our streams. So here are some photos of the project over time. And I'd encourage you to visit our website if you're interested so that you can see more about what we've done. Another part of that made this a particularly meaningful and positive experience is I was very proactive about reaching out into the community and inviting people from other churches, synagogue, community organizations. And so many of our volunteers were not Latter-day Saints. And at every event, I had some of our local African-American folks who were members of this historic community come and talk. So on this property, there's a cemetery, a school, which was the colored school for our area, and a church. So for example, in this picture, you'll see on the left and in the center right, folks who were Betsy Hebron on the right, and I want to call him brother. He's not a member of the church, but he feels like a brother. Hallman, Tompkins Hallman on the left. You know, he served in World War II in the South Pacific. And it's just been a very interesting thing to get well acquainted with and learn about the history of our community and what it was like for people who could not attend school with the white children and only got the secondhand books and so on. So I think that we've not only done a lot of good for the environment, but good for our community, bringing people together around creating a beautiful place. So why am I kind of taking this at some length? It's because I want you to know that if you join up and are able to create a local group, I mean, you would likely do something entirely different. Each group will be unique and do things tailored to their group and the location. But there are things you can do working together that as an individual you could not do. So even though I'm trained as a master gardener and I had the skill set to run a project like this, I could not on my own have gotten the grant and done it. It requires working through a 501c3, which Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship is a registered 501c3, and it required having that structure. So creating local groups is a way of being able to provide opportunities to do even more than what we could do as individual earth stewards. And so this is our website is Earth East, very easy, eartheast.org. And future local groups will not have their own websites. The only reason we do is that at the time we were formed, the larger organization didn't have a functional website yet. But anyway, so that's the website if you want to learn more. I led it for about 5 years, and this last fall, we had a transition, which is really a good sign of like that the group is kind of maturing, is that I could step back, and Ellen White is taking over. She's a wonderful young mom, lives in Virginia. She's our new leader. We have a team of 6 co-leaders. You'll see Matt Markoff, Kate Cummings, myself, Becca Maldonado, Laurel Carroll, and Jane Berner. Some of you may have seen Jane we shared a post that Jane did on the main LDS or Stewardship Facebook page. And if you haven't seen it, you should look at it. It's really interesting. Okay, so I wanted to also show that even though we've had COVID, it hasn't really stopped us from being able to get together and do good things. So if you want, I'm not going to trace back all the things we've done over 5 years, but I'm just going to share some of the things we've done in the last little while with COVID. So we commemorated the Joseph Smith's first vision by holding a hike, thinking while we walked about Joseph Smith being in woods very similar to the woods we were walking in, because we live where there's also a northeastern deciduous woodland with similar types of trees. And although we often see these as in images as fully leafed out, at the time of the first vision, it would have been similar to what you see in this upper photo of the trees not yet being in leaf, but just starting to have the growth. Anyway, so that was a great event. Another thing in 2020 is we were invited to participate at the National Cathedral, they were having to transition to do the event online rather than in person. So they asked if we had a short video we could share about our faith and earth stewardship. And they liked the video so much, it was what they chose to start the service with. And there were several thousand people present. So that was like a real, although it was our little group doing it, it was sort of a real win for being able to share what our faith teachings are relative to earth stewardship. We have continued to hold work events at Pleasant View because, of course, the weeds don't take a break, even though there's COVID. So, but we've done it with, for example, on Juneteenth, we had 2 separate events, each one only having about 10 people, 10 volunteers, and we spread out across the 3 acres, or in like this photo, which I don't know if you can see it yet. There may be a lag between when I talk and when the photos are coming up, but there's a cluster of people working together. They're a family unit. So we kept families together so they didn't have to wear masks. And then other people we spaced out throughout the property. Cassandra, can you just let me know, is there a lag on the slide?
I'm not seeing a lag.
Okay, great. We also took a field trip to Joe Richardson. He's a member of our group. He's a former bishop and a marvelous earth steward, like a hero level earth steward. And if you want, go to our website under stewardship, and I've written up about some of the things he does. So for example, he uses this book Drawdown, and he models for us all the different projects that are listed in there of ways to reduce carbon. So for example, he creates more electricity than they use, both their family and the business they run. They have a wind turbine, they have composting toilets. He's done a major stream restoration project, planted 1,000 native trees, converted an area of 19 acres into native perennial plants. He does a huge vegetable garden and massive composting system project. It's just amazing what he's done. And then in addition to that, he has created a program called Lunch Out of Landfills for our schools, which is now in, I don't know the exact number, something like 19 local schools, where they're literally saving each school on the order of tons of waste that otherwise would have been going to landfill or incineration. The good food that can be reused is given to food shelters or food banks, things like the apples, the milks, and so on that hadn't been opened or used. And then other things are either recycled or composted, and very little goes into the waste stream. And he's working to have this go statewide. So think of what of an impact that one individual can have. So again, it's inspiring when you start a group like this. So I didn't know this, Joe, but somebody contacted me who knew me and knew him and said, oh, I know another person who's really into earth stewardship. So like you start finding each other, because you may feel like you're kind of a lone voice in the wilderness. Maybe there's nobody in your ward that cares about earth stewardship, but there will be other people who do care, when you're able to reach out to a slightly bigger group. Anyway, so that's another advantage of having a local group, being able to pull together, learn from each other. And speaking of learning, another thing we've done is sponsored some online presentations. For example, 3 wonderful young entomologists presented on insects. And that was led by Becca Maldonado and Ellen White, who's for many years been a vegan, she and her husband and son. And so she shared ideas about sustainable eating and how that could fit into our lifestyle and the positive impact that could have. And we talked about ideas that could allow us, this was for a December talk, to have Christmas with less waste. And some of these talks are available on our website. The missionaries during COVID were basically locked to a large extent in their apartments. They were not allowed to go out tracting. There was very little that they could do. And knowing that, we set up, I think I took them out 8 different times on various locations. As Cassandra mentioned, I lead our local watershed group. And so there's always trash along the stream areas. So we would go out and collect trash. They loved being outside. And it gave me a chance to talk to them about earth stewardship and why it's an important part of our faith. In the fall, we held another event at Pleasant View. The reason I'm including this is it's an example of being able to reach out to other faith groups. We invited and had about a dozen people from a local synagogue join with us. And we could hold this event. Memorial Day, of course, is on a Monday. So if you want to reach out, if you have a group who want to do things with the community and you have Jewish folks or Muslim, you can pick a day that's not your Sabbath, not their Sabbath, to do something good together in terms of stewardship. We held an event in June of last year on the Mount Vernon Trail where we cleared out terrible invasive vines that are pulling down these beautiful big old trees. And what was nice about that project is right along the Potomac River is that we were able to see this beautiful church. That is a Latter-day Saint church. Isn't that lovely? And it overlooks, it's on the Mount Vernon Trail. It overlooks the trail, overlooks the Potomac River. From the front of the church, you look out at the river. And the bishop of that church allowed us to come park in their parking lot, use their bathrooms. And he came with us. I think that's him right there. He came with us and helped out with the project, which was really nice. And then this upcoming year, one of the things we have planned, which I'm looking forward to, is this is called Parker's Creek. It's one of the few remaining really natural and beautiful, healthy waterways in Maryland. And the property around it is held by the American Chestnut Trust. And they, if you plan ahead, so I had to do this back in December, contact them to get it scheduled for this summer. We have a date in June, a Saturday in June, where they're going to provide the canoes and lead us on a canoeing event where we'll canoe up through this lovely meandering stream to the Chesapeake Bay, which is here. And while we're there, their land officer is going to think of what would be a good stewardship event for us to do. Maybe something like it, removing invasive plants or planting, I don't know what it is, whatever they need, we'll do a little bit of service while we're present. Anyway, so enough of that. So that is a group that's been around 5 years, what we've been able to do. So what I'm hoping is that at least some of you are saying to yourself, oh, I think I'd like to have a local group where I live. I'd like to gather with other Latter-day Saints and do stewardship. So we have created a very streamlined process for you to do this. This form you see here is available online. And if you're interested, you could contact, if you can't find it on our website, you can contact Serena, who's our executive director. You could contact me. We'll get you a copy of it. Anyway, it's a very simple application. You just have to give your name, email, and your location. And to start a group, you need to have 5 LDSES members who want to help you start the group. And there's no requirement that members have to have been part of LDSES for any length of time. So you could go out and recruit your family and friends and say, wouldn't you like to help us start something where we live that's like this? And if they want to, they could just go in online, sign up to be a member of LDS or stewardship, and that same day sign this document, right? So it's a pretty easy to do if you can, like have the desire to make it happen. It can happen. There's this memorandum of understanding, the MOU, as I mentioned, that was the format of which was developed when we started our first group. It's a good document. You'd read it carefully, sign it. And again, the main thing you're agreeing to is you keep church standards, that events you'd host, would be the sort of thing that any church member could attend and feel good about. We're not political. We focus more on personal, family, and group stewardship, not on political action. because we want people of whatever political persuasions they might be to feel comfortable in our group. So that's something we're very consistent about. So once all that's done, it's submitted to the board, which would review the information and vote yes to bring you in as the next local group. So where do we have groups? I'm so excited to say we have 3 international groups already. So the first was formed in Germany, and they launched, I don't know the exact date, but by July 2021, they had their Facebook group up. They're led by Rolf. And I think he's not on tonight because it's the middle of, it's, you know, like they're 6 hours ahead of me and it's 9 p.m. here. So, you know, it's like in the middle of the very early wee hours of the morning. So, but he's been a member of LDS or Stewardship practically from the beginning. And he's doing a great job as the leader of their local group. They have a private Facebook group that you have to sign up for in order to access. If you're interested, you could email him at germany@ldsorstewardship.org. And say if you, for example, had served a mission in Germany, or if you have any friends or family who live in Germany, please let them know that this group exists. I love looking at their Facebook posts. For example, every day, I mean, they post much more frequently than the main LDS or Stewardship group does. Every day in December, they had a really excellent post on ways to celebrate Christmas in a sustainable Earth stewardship kind of way. Lovely ideas. And, you know, so even I don't speak German, but I have signed up because I like seeing what they're posting and I can just have Google Translate for me. Anyway, so that's their group. They already have 147 members of their Facebook group. And most of what they're going to do is going to be online because their members are extremely spread out. There are not very many people who are Latter-day Saint clustered together in one place in Germany. So for the future, at least the foreseeable future, their plan is not to actually do physical things together, but to support each other online with ideas and to host events online. And this was a talk that they hosted. And it was apparently a great success and was picked up and reported on at the Mormon newsroom. Then we have 2 groups in Africa. Uganda, this group was started by Francis Kalema, and I believe that is he holding the watering can. This photo is of a project that they led, and I admire them because they have had such hardships in the short period of time that they have existed as a group, but they've persisted anyway. Not very long after they were formed as a group, you know, as I mentioned, to form a group, it takes 5 individuals. 3 of the 5 were killed in a terrible accident. The roads are very unsafe there, and apparently this kind of fatal accident is not uncommon, but isn't that sad? So of the 5, then there were just 2. But Francis persisted and the group still exists. And they had been planning to do this major project of buying several hundred fruit trees and plant them at a refugee camp in their country. But because of COVID, they completely locked down the refugee camp and the government agencies would not allow them in to plant the trees. So then they had to, and again, mind you, this is Francis that's now the 5 are down to just 2. And in spite of that, he still completed the project. He found 20 schools willing to take the trees because he'd already purchased the trees, and he worked with the students and they got the trees planted. Isn't that kind of an amazing story of endurance? And so I just think wonderful things will happen as we have people from around the globe who get to work together doing stewardship. And one thing we can do is we have set aside up to $500 for any one of the local groups when there's a specific project they have in mind and they need resources to do that project to help pay for the resources that those funds could be drawn upon. So that is Uganda. Then Ghana has a group that's our latest, and it is led by Harrison Frumpong. And they're just so enthusiastic. They're currently planning a very large-scale cleanup of their city, where they're hoping to get as many as 80 volunteers. They have purchased supplies like rakes and brooms and a wheelbarrow and shovel and various things that they're going to need. And they've been working with their government, local government, to get permission and to recruit volunteers. And then they're going to go around to all the various places where there's things are not looking good, where there's trash and problems, and clean it all up. Okay, so Harrison has sent me a short video. It's only about 1.5 minutes. And I'm going to play it. I apologize because I know you're going to have to really strain to hear. He's got kind of a soft voice, but even if you can't hear everything, you will see how earnest he is, and I think appreciate it, or I hope.
Dear LDSES Stewardship, my name is Harrison Frumpong. I am the local group leader of LDSES Stewardship Ghana. We are extremely grateful for the establishment of such a noble organization. We have active members who help us plan and coordinate our local activities. We are extremely grateful for the establishment of the project management process. It has helped us to set up our organization for safety, fulfillment, and success. One suggestion that we have for local groups that are yet to be formed is that whenever they carry out their projects, they should do their best to involve the local government agencies whenever possible. Once they do that, they will be able to meet new people and be able to invite more people to join and carry out future stewardship projects. Thank you very much. We are grateful.
Okay, so in case you couldn't hear that, he expressed several times how grateful they are for the process and help that they've had in establishing their group, as well as he gives some advice that he thinks other new groups, as you get established and you're planning events, to connect with your local government, because it'll allow you to have more success and engage with a broader group of people to accomplish good things. And I think that's excellent advice. So those are 3 international groups. And now I'll just talk briefly about our local US groups. We now have a group in California. It's led by Samantha Standring. And I think because of COVID, they've had a hard time getting launched off and having events. But if you live in California, I think I haven't had a chance to look back at chat while I've been talking, but at the beginning there was Doug Sereno who had signed in with a California address. So if you're interested, you could send a note to Samantha at SOCAL, Southern California, LDS or stewardship.org. Please, any of you that have friends or family in California that might be interested, pass along the word that this group exists, and let's help Samantha get launched. Jared is on the call, I think. Jared, if you're on, do you want to say anything?
Hey, I started a group here in New York City. So anybody that's Northeast, or if you know people that are Northeast US, that would like to meet together, we're here, and there are a couple of people that are kind of affiliated in Massachusetts and Connecticut as well. And so ours is mostly kind of online for now. But if you have friends or family who are in this part of the country, reach out to me.
Thanks, Jared. And Jared's on the board of LDS or Stewardship, and I'm sure would be really happy if there are others who want to jump in and help lead the group. Because one challenge, as you'll see as we go through some of these local groups, is they're being led by people who are also serving on the board of the larger organization, and it's hard to do both because they both take time. Okay, then we actually now have a Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship group in Salt Lake City. And I always kind of like smile a little bit about this to think that it's taken a while to get a group launched here or in Provo, Orem. And part of that, I think, is that we've got Peter Ashcroft and Serena as leaders of this group. And again, if anybody is from the Salt Lake City area or anywhere in the Wasatch Front, basically, if you would be interested in helping to lead the group, it would be extremely helpful, because Peter, for example, besides being on the general board, also leads the monthly LDSES book group. So I think the need here is to get some additional leadership in place. They have not yet had events, I don't think, too much other than a sort of a planning event. So if you wanted to jump in, you could be one of the pioneers for this Latter-day Saint Salt Lake City group. And then there's the Provo Orem. It is not yet, I think, formally submitted as a group, but there's an effort underway to get a group there established. And again, that effort is being currently led by Brigham Daniels, who's the president of the whole LDSES. So if you know anybody in that Provo Orem area that would like to step up and help lead a local group, the volunteer needs are there. It's fun to lead a local group because unlike the bigger, like serving on the board, where there just as a lot of your time is spent on sort of meetings and things that are good and that need to be done to keep the organization running, but it's not direct or stewardship. When you're leading a local group, you can just get in there and do fun things and work in a small group and get to know each other. It's a very rewarding kind of activity. And then finally, Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship, wherever you live, here's some places we hope in the near future to have groups, because we know there are people who live there who are members of our organization: Logan, Southern Utah, Idaho, Arizona, Northern California, Georgia, Hawaii. I was hoping we'd have had more people on tonight's event, but I think that the publicity on it didn't go out very far in advance. So this will be recorded. And if you know people that you think might be interested in starting a group, why don't you suggest that they listen to the recording if you think that'd be helpful, so that we can help this process grow. Our goal is to just continue and add groups. It would be lovely if we could have another 5 or 6 new groups come in over this next year. And then on a separate topic, you might have heard that we started at the beginning of last year something called the Sacred Place Initiative. We wanted to mark or commemorate the 200 years since Joseph Smith's first vision. And then with COVID, that got put forward to the 201st year after. But we wanted to commemorate it with 201 stewardship projects. And so far, again, there's not been a lot of publicity for this. So I just wanted to put the word out so that those of you who are on the call maybe you've done something over this past year of Earth stewardship that you could report. It's a simple process. The link to the form is on our website. If you look from the main menu of LDS or Stewardship website, it says Act, and you go under that. The very first part of that is, you'll see a picture of Brigham and a description of this initiative and a link. It takes about 3 or 4 minutes to fill out. It's just like your name and a brief description of what the stewardship is. And it could be as simple as, and if you haven't done something, you could plan something for in the next few months. Like the winter is actually a great time to go out hiking and picking up trash, because you can sometimes see things that would otherwise be covered up with plant material in the growing season. So if you haven't done anything of earth stewardship in the last year, just plan something between now, and it'd be great to get it in by the end of March if possible. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could report 201 stewardship projects? Because that, again, is something that could be done without, it doesn't matter about COVID, because you can do it as an individual or as a family or in a small group. And then also just please look back in your mind, oh, isn't there something I've done that I could report? And it could even be something like, I was thinking sacred place. It could even be, say, if you weatherized your house so you would use less energy and your home is a sacred place, that could count. You could record that. We just want to see a variety of things happening in different places. And Ian, I think maybe, I'm just guessing, but I saw you signed in from Plano, Texas. And I know that, okay, there's not very many things listed. So I can tell you one of them was from Plano, Texas. Was that you? Yeah, okay. That's fun. Do you want to just unmute yourself and tell us what it was?
I did trash cleanup in our local creek bed.
Wonderful. So, you know, a lot of people don't realize, I mean, that's a lot more than aesthetics. Trash that's left behind in our waterways, they break down and it causes really a lot of harm to wildlife and to water quality. Anyway, so great. That's excellent. And I don't know who else among you might have noticed this, but look at this list of states. So we had Ian from Texas. There were about 10 of the 14 events were in Maryland, one in Virginia, I think 1 or 2 in Idaho by the same, I think 2 by the same person, and then 1 in Georgia. Who's missing here? Utah. How about that? Nothing listed from Utah. So we've got to do better at reaching out to our Utah members to say, okay, we know you're doing stewardship. Let's just get it reported. And then also I wanted to highlight the project from David and Marnie Coons. And you could go look at it at their website, Spirit Tree Farms. They have a small family owned and run farm in Georgia. And they've taken what looks to me like maybe about half an acre and transitioned it into native plants, sort of native meadow plants. This butterfly picture is from this. And then created using the mulch, this bark mulch, a spiral path through this meadow. And the idea is that you can walk through the meadow and in a prayerful or meditative way. Marnie says that as she's there working to create this, she has been praying for the people that she knows who are having problems, and including just praying generally for people in need, and that she has been able to create a sacred place, which is really a marvelous thing. And it's a place of habitat for pollinators and birds and other creatures. So again, another really kind of inspiring example. So that's it in terms of what I had prepared. And I thought now we could just maybe talk a little bit about any questions you might have about starting a local group or ideas, whatever you want to say.